Tonight on Reporting Scotland, organisers hail the European Championships a success, claiming they've raised the bar for future world sporting events.
We had high expectations to start with, but I think over the last 2 weeks the city's really come to life with great sporting action, amazing culture from across Europe, and thousands of spectators really enjoying themselves.
The event's legacy could also mean a big change to a city landmark. Also in the programme, farmers are to get early access to government loans to help them cope with the knock-on effects of this year's adverse weather. We speak to the actress turned activist Rose McGowan about abuse in Hollywood and the Me Too campaign. It may be 50 years since Shell started drilling for oil and gas in the North Sea, but its boss insists it still has a bright future. And controversial barriers blocking views to Edinburgh Castle are taken down by order of the City Council. Good evening. The organisers of the European Championships have hailed the event a success, with an estimated 500,000 spectators coming to Glasgow and beyond. The competition, which ended last night, was the biggest sporting event in Scotland since the 2014 Commonwealth Games. It's hoped its legacy will encourage other big events, but it could also mean a controversial change to a city landmark. More on that in a moment. But first, let's cross to our reporter, Jane Lewis.
Well, Jackie, organisers of the European Championships say that the city of Glasgow delivered a hugely successful event. And of course it was a first. It was the first time that these 7 sports all involved came together. They combined their own European Championships at the same time in almost the one place. Organisers claim around 138,000 tickets for the sports were issued, and venues such as the Hydro behind me were packed out, with spectators treated to a variety of world-class performances. Now, of course, Glasgow co-hosted these European Championships with the city of Berlin. That's where the athletics were held, and that's where Scotland's Laura Muir was crowned European champion, in the 1500 metres. Earlier today, she arrived back home. I caught up with her, and she told me that she's confident that she can repeat that European success on the world stage. Arriving back home with something to declare. Laura Muir, a golden girl on the European stage, and very much delivering as the firm pre-race favourite.
Yeah, it was different. I mean, I've had pressure before in terms of being in the mix for medals, but not necessarily sort of the red hot favourites. So yeah, it was a kind of first for me, but I just knew that the pressure's there because they're expecting me to do well, and you know what, I know I can deliver. So I just went into it actually pretty relaxed. I knew the more relaxed I am, the better I race, and just really went to kind of enjoy the whole experience. I did that, and I came away with the gold.
I'm surprised that Laura Muir's gone as hard so soon, and she's already putting a bit of pressure on the others.
What was going through your head when you were ahead and when no one seemed to be making an effort to catch you?
Just keep going. Yeah, I was just trying to control my pace. I didn't want to go too hard and then risk kind of blowing up in the later stages. So yeah, it was trying to control the pace but keep it at a good pace as well, that I could maintain to the finish, and yeah, it worked.
It certainly did. And not only did Muir win European gold, but she became the first British female to do so over that distance.
It's going to be Laura Muir winning the gold medal in a fast time, 4:2.32.
Muir's desire was very much on show in Berlin last night. An impressive performance among Europe's best. So can she repeat that on the world stage?
I would like to think so. I mean, I think she's already run, basically about one of the fastest times this millennium. So I think, she's already shown she's competing with the very best in the world, beating them, week in, week out. Sometimes they get the better of her. So definitely, conquer Europe, next target the world.
Yeah, definitely. I think I've been thereabouts for the past few years, and I've shown the pedigree I have in my event and different events. So yes, certainly it's something we're striving towards next year and then towards Tokyo in 2020.
So confident of world success, although for now it's about enjoying European glory. Well, running alongside the actual sporting action at these championships in the city was Festival 2018, a mix of cultural and other musical events held across a variety of places in the city, but the main focal point of that was on George Square. Now, so successful was that today Glasgow City Council have unveiled plans to pedestrianise the famous Glasgow landmark. With more on that, here's our local government correspondent, Jamie McIver.
George Square is one of Scotland's most important public spaces. Every year it hosts dozens of events, large and small. For the past 2 weeks it's been at the heart of the European Championships, and during that time it's been close to traffic.
We had high expectations to start with, but I think over the last 2 weeks the city has really come to life with great sporting action, amazing culture from across Europe, and thousands of spectators really enjoying themselves. So Glasgow, we know, is a city that puts on a great show, and we certainly did that over the last 2 weeks.
And George Square's part in that show was huge. The success of events in the square means the council's now looking at whether to pedestrianise it permanently. One leading business group says there are both pros and cons.
It could be a great new place for visitors and residents to come and work, to come and live and to come and enjoy themselves. On the other hand, we do have concerns about issues like access, issues for businesses that need to get deliveries.
Indeed, permanent pedestrianisation throws up several important questions, not least the question of access to Queen Street Railway Station, which is currently being redeveloped. And the council's already been trying to cut traffic in the square. This nearby bus gate has been controversial.
If you're looking to get access to your premises, and you're not necessarily on George Square, but you're on one of those many streets in the grid system in the city centre, you're going to be asking, how easy is it going to be for me to get in, and for my staff and my customers to get in as well?
But big changes to George Square can risk big rows. The previous Labour administration in Glasgow abandoned plans for a radical overhaul of the square itself. If the current council thinks there's enough support for pedestrianisation, it may produce a detailed plan in a few months' time. Jamie McIver, reporting Scotland.
And Jane, to get back to the championships, I suppose the success has led to hopes that Scotland can attract even bigger sporting events.
I think these championships were built on the foundations of what Glasgow achieved during Glasgow 2014 in the Commonwealth Games. They were a great success, so of course you attract other multi-sports events, don't you? Already in 2019, Glasgow will host the European World Indoor Athletics Championships. Later that summer, they will host the European Short Course Swimming Championships. So plans are afoot to hold more world-class sporting events as well. Indeed, some officials I've spoken to from Glasgow City Council say they want more of the same and plenty of it, because they believe that Glasgow now has a reputation for being the #1 city in the world for not just attracting sporting events, but for hosting them as well.
Thank you very much, Jane Lewis there. A former Scottish football coach and kit man has been jailed for 3 years and 9 months at Belfast Crown Court after pleading guilty to 8 counts of sexual assault against a teenager in Northern Ireland. 72-year-old Jim McCafferty worked at Celtic, Hibs and Falkirk before moving to Northern Ireland. He initially pleaded not guilty to a series of sexual offences against the same boy over a 3-year period before December 2015, but he changed his plea to guilty on the morning of his trial in May. A worker at an Aberdeenshire care home has been charged in connection with an alleged assault involving an elderly resident. Police Scotland said a female had been arrested and charged in connection with what was described as a minor assault at Muirhead Care Home. It's understood to have involved a woman in her 90s. Last week, Aberdeen Sheriff Court made an interim suspension order, meaning the home will not be able to operate from September. The court has heard how a teenage boy was kidnapped and tortured after he went to his local shop in Renfrew to buy sweets. The attack was carried out by Christopher Rennie, who'd only been out of prison for a week, and Anthony Wright. Their 14-year-old victim was taken to a flat where he was blindfolded, beaten and robbed. At the High Court in Glasgow, both men were convicted of abduction, assault and robbery. They were remanded in custody and sentence was deferred. Scottish farmers are being offered government loans to help them recover from the results of months of bad weather. The scheme is being launched to allow farmers early access to money. Katie Hunter reports.
Many farms across Scotland have been hit by month after month of bad weather. The beast from the east earlier this year followed a wet autumn. The effects are still being felt.
On a normal year with normal weather, the bale stack would be out to here.
A harsh winter followed by a dry summer means Willie Harper from Bridge of Weir has only half the number of bales he'd normally have.
I've had to spend quite a bit of money already. I've had to buy extra fertiliser. I've had to grow a forage crop to try and graze that in the early part of the winter. I've never had to do that before. So it's cost me money already.
Many farmers across Scotland face a shortage of fodder. As a result, some have sold livestock earlier than planned. In response, the Scottish Government is providing farmers with early access to their basic payments. Up to 90% of the money should be available from October rather than December.
This, I hope, will provide some certainty for the farmers and crofters, their suppliers and their bankers to know that that money will be in their account around October this year. As you say, it's not in itself going to solve all the problems. There's no silver bullet, but I do believe that it will be a major help for many who otherwise would face even greater financial problems.
Some farmers were already facing difficulty after winter. The heatwave added to their woes.
We needed a really good growing year this year, and it hasn't happened. This summer has been too dry, and it's affected the whole of Scotland, and in fact the whole of Britain. So we're really, to carry through the livestock and farms this winter, there's a lot of planning, a lot of, cooperation between farms.
The National Farmers Union has welcomed the early payments, but says the extreme weather means many farmers still face a challenging year. Katie Hunter, reporting Scotland, Bridge of Weir.
Well, there's better news for business activity in Scotland, which has risen at its strongest rate for 4 years, according to the latest survey from the Royal Bank of Scotland. It suggests July saw a marked increase in output for private sector companies. New contracts and improved sales meant jobs were also created last month. However, despite more upbeat market conditions, business confidence dipped to a 7-month low, which the report claims is down to concerns over Brexit. Investigations are continuing into the death of a 51-year-old man who was found unconscious on a street in Edinburgh. Emergency services were called to Brunswick Road at about 1 a.m. on Friday, but the man was pronounced dead at the scene. A 44-year-old man has been charged in connection with an assault prior to the death. Police carrying out a missing persons inquiry say that human remains have been found at a house in Paisley. Kevin Bishop from the Renfrewshire town was reported missing on the 4th of August. Police say his family have been made aware of the discovery in the house in Shaw Road. A post-mortem examination will take place to establish the identity of the remains. A 46-year-old man has been arrested and police inquiries are continuing. Rose McGowan was one of the first to speak out about the abuse she says riddled Hollywood. Her story helped launch the Me Too movement. Well, the actor turned activist is at the Edinburgh International Book Festival to talk about her book, which tells her story. Our arts correspondent Pauline McLean met her.
Actress Rose McGowan was one of the first to speak out about the abuse she says riddled Hollywood. It wasn't just the film industry, and she wasn't alone. The Me Too campaign saw millions of people speak out.
I wanted to show people that you can chop off the head of power, because for a long time people have been biting at the ankles of power, and they didn't seem very effective. And it seemed to me that we were having the same conversation round and round since the dawn of time, really. And I thought I wanted to see if I could make time go faster and move us faster along, to a better society.
And things are changing. Actors in black showing support at awards ceremonies, and more people adding their voices. But the journey from actress to activist has been a tough one. Social media may be a useful platform, but it's also been a bruising experience. She took time off recently and returned to her native Italy, but realised she needs to be in the public eye.
I don't know how to not be me. And I don't know how to not stand up for people that haven't had a voice. I had a lot of people when I was simply a celebrity, quote unquote, hate me for that fact. And so one day I just realized, well, if they're going to hate me, I might as well give them a reason.
I have been silenced for 20 years.
But speaking up has also encouraged others to speak out. Up to 10 people a day get in touch to share their experiences. And that, she says, is what keeps her going and speaking at events like this.
I think there's no choice. If you start something, I don't know if there's a finish in my lifetime, but I know that there's a really good start. And I always say, I am not Me Too, I am a Me Too. So there's a part where you're collectively in it and then a part where you're driving it. But I'm tenacious. And I've dealt with a lot of adversity, and I will continue to push for what is right and for people to be free in their own lives and in their own mind. And that's what I hope people get from Brave.
Pauline McLean, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Now it's 7:15. A reminder of tonight's main story. Glasgow City Council is looking at permanently pedestrianising George Square following the success of the move during the European Championships. And still to come, the controversial barriers blocking views to Edinburgh Castle are taken down following orders from the City Council. The head of Shell in the North Sea insists oil and gas remains very significant despite a political shift towards greener energy. But the company, celebrating its 50th anniversary operating in the UK, says it's already positioning itself for an energy transition. Our energy correspondent Kevin Keane now reports from the Shearwater platform in the central North Sea.
In this industry, even the most menial of jobs comes with added risk. But these places, seen by so few of us, are the powerhouse of our carbon-driven economy, at least for now. Some of these structures have been here almost since the industry was born, but 50 years on, it's innovation which is driving it into the future.
We have to be a lot smarter about how we're getting it out. So they are bringing in a lot more technology, such as monitoring, online monitoring, digitalisation, predictive analysis.
Because these platforms are decades old, the easily accessible oil has been largely extracted. Getting what's left is costly, and so new technology is relied on to make it viable.
This area here is the real sharp end of the production facility. It's called the wellhead, and these are known as Christmas trees, and if you look at the shape of them, you can understand why. After here, that product is separated into oil and gas before being piped to the land.
It's a real team effort. Being 140 miles from Aberdeen, they have to be self-sufficient, with some room for relaxation. The industry is past its peak of the late 1990s. The oil is depleting and there's a new focus on shale gas as well as renewables. But the man in charge tells me the industry still has a bright future.
It's a declining basin, it's a mature basin. And Mother Nature is at force, the resources get smaller. But we are definitely still very significant and very important. We produce today more than 2/3 of the primary energy needs of the UK.
Many of these platforms were never expected to still be around today. The process of removing them is now ramping up, and so this seascape will probably look very different in another 50 years. Kevin Keane reporting Scotland on the Shearwater platform in the North Sea.
And you can get a 360-degree tour of that oil installation and a closer look at life on a rig in our BBC Scotland News Facebook page. Scotland's gamekeepers say they're expecting a poor grouse shooting season this year. The exceptional weather, with late snow followed by a long, warm, dry spell, has affected the number of birds breeding successfully. This means some estates are cancelling shooting days to preserve stocks for the future. The grouse season is expected to be worth over £30 million a year to the Scottish economy. Sport now. Scotland manager Alec McLeish is preparing for a friendly with Belgium at Hampden on the 7th of September before Scotland starts its Nations League campaign at home to Albania 3 days later. He admits it's been a difficult summer of watching the World Cup from afar, waiting for Scotland to return to action.
Every time there's a major tournament, and as a Scotland supporter, then it's really gut-wrenching that we're not there. So there's no doubt that Tartan Army tuning into watching the World Cup as well. Everybody associated with Scotland, the players, the managers alike, seeing that we're not there, it's just something that we really must aspire to big time.
The Scottish Professional Football League is searching for a new media partner to broadcast its matches outside the UK. The game's governing body has terminated a 10-year deal it signed with the global sports agency MP & Silva in 2013 after they defaulted on a number of payments. SPFL officials say plans are being put in place to ensure Scottish football doesn't suffer an international blackout in the 167 countries where it's currently shown. Controversial hoardings in Edinburgh's Princes Street Gardens, which have been blocking views to the castle, have been removed. The high black screens had been put there as part of what were described as public safety measures surrounding a series of concerts in the park. Some residents had complained, and the leader of the City Council says they were not a good solution. Gillian Sharp reports.
This morning's view of Edinburgh Castle from one part of Princes Street. The gardens, the venue for a series of summer concerts. The barriers, part of public safety preparations to prevent overcrowding. But some passers-by remained less than impressed.
I think it's possibly sort of taking away from the whole idea of the Scottish perspective of being welcoming. It's almost sort of isolating people from what's going on in essentially the capital city.
To be honest, I haven't noticed until you told me, and it doesn't really look very nice. But I mean, if it will go down after the festival, then it will be great.
It's taken away a lot of people's pleasure of looking at Edinburgh Castle, beautiful gardens, and I mean, it's not a private venue. The gardens are not a private venue; they're a public space.
Just a short while later, though, and the hoarding is gone. The council says it wants everything in keeping with the city.
It wasn't a good solution for what our city is really all about. We're about our world heritage, we're about our fantastic landscape and skyline, and they blocked out what was a spectacular view of the city, so they have now gone.
Princes Street Gardens, a favourite spot for a stroll, whatever the weather, but also host to lots of different events throughout the year. Some conservationists say there needs to be a much wider discussion about how public spaces in the city are used.
We need to have a really good, proper, effective public debate on how we kind of use these spaces. Not just about, is this event a good thing or not, but a more fundamental rethink about what these public spaces mean for Edinburgh.
Instead of hoardings, a section of pavement is now to be closed while the concerts are underway. The council says it's all about striking a better balance. Gillian Sharp, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
Well, back across the country, Glasgow's International Piping Festival, Piping Live, got underway today. It's the 15th time the festival has taken place in the city. 5,000 pipers will play at around 150 events to more than 40,000 fans who attend the event each year. It culminates, of course, in the World Pipe Band Championships at the weekend.
There are great piping traditions in other countries, and I think that for us to have this in Glasgow, over the years, it's now created the world's biggest week of piping, world's biggest piping festival, culminating at the end of the week, of course, with the World Pipe Band Championships. So it's really quite an amazing spectacle.
It better not rain. Let's get the weather now from Christopher.
Fingers crossed, Jackie. Fingers crossed. Thank you very much. Hello there. Well, it was a bit of a miserable Monday for most. Cloudy, wet, murky at times. There was some sunshine, though. Like yesterday, Shetland had the lion's share of it. Now, for the week ahead, we need to look to the jet stream to understand what's happening. This fast-moving ribbon of wind way up in the atmosphere, a conveyor belt, if you like, delivering weather towards us. Let's run it again and see what's coming. Low pressure. And that means outbreaks of rain, wind, cloud, and actually disappointingly cool for the time of year. Anyway, let's take a look at the next few hours, and it's largely dry across the country this evening, but fairly cloudy, the odd spot of light rain or drizzle around. Some clear spells and a few showers drifting through Orkney and Shetland for a time. Not a cold night, though. Temperatures holding in double digits, around 11 to 14 Celsius, though winds strengthening in the northwest. So, to tomorrow, and the first of those weather fronts sweeping its way across the country, driven by low pressure in the northwest. It means outbreaks of rain and a strengthening breeze. In fact, to start the day, there'll be some brightness. Certainly Aberdeenshire down towards the borders, but the cloud quickly streams in and the rain follows, initially in the west and then journeying east through the course of the day. By mid-afternoon, though, a lot of that rain will have eased away. Holding on in the west, cloudy, drizzly conditions here, but in the east, after that spell of wet weather, something a little bit brighter to end Tuesday. Temperatures around 17 to 19 Celsius and winds from the southwest. Moderate, occasionally fresh, particularly around northwestern coasts. So some brightness perhaps up towards the Murray coast, northern Aberdeenshire, in towards the Murray Firth, but a very different day for Orkney and Shetland compared with today. Some cloud, some rain. Rest of the afternoon into the evening, largely cloudy, but hopefully some late sunshine for many central and eastern parts as the cloud thins and breaks. And then it's midweek, Wednesday. Wet and windy, unfortunately. We've got a cold front moving in, and that means some of the rain will be quite heavy at times. There it is, pushing across the UK, driven by low pressure up towards Iceland, and that rain producing, well, some fairly big puddles, surface water spray on the roads, poor visibility. Bit of a miserable day, has to be said. That rain initially in the west, but moving east through the course of the day. Temperatures, well, academic, mid to high teens, perhaps 20, 21 in the northeast, given some sunshine. Still some wet weather around on Thursday, but in the form of showers. Out with them, there'll be some sunshine. A blustery day once again, sunshine and showers, and temperatures around about the mid, maybe high teens. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you, Christopher. Now a reminder of tonight's main news. A doctor struck off after being convicted of gross negligence manslaughter after the death of a 6-year-old boy has won the right to practice again. The Court of Appeal said Hadiza Bawa-Garba did not present a continuing risk to patients. The European Championships have been hailed a success as an estimated 500,000 people came to Glasgow and beyond for the biggest sporting event in the city since the 2014 Commonwealth Games. And that's Reporting Scotland. I'll be back with the late bulletin at 10:30. Join me for that if you can. Until then, good evening.